What happens when a millionaire CEO scrubs bug guts off windshields and sees a young worker nearly collapse from exhaustion? Zayden Moore stood outside the 11th location of his car wash chain, tying his apron behind his back. The Arizona sun was already burning by mid-morning. He squinted up at the sign above the bay, a place he hadn't set foot in since it opened 2 years ago. He built the company himself, one pressure washer, one rusted-out van, and a lot of elbow grease. Now it had grown to 11 full-service locations and over 100 employees. But lately, something felt off. Customer complaints were up. Turnover at this location was the highest in the chain, and when he asked the district manager for answers, he got vague excuses about the younger generation not wanting to work hard. That didn't sit right with him. So he did what he always did when he couldn't trust the numbers. He went straight to the source. Zayden's disguise was simple but effective. He'd grown out a scruffy beard, wore thick-rimmed glasses, and picked up a name tag that read Kyle. No one at this location had ever met the CEO in person. Most had only seen a headshot on a poster during onboarding orientation, and that was 6 years and 20 pounds ago. He was introduced by the assistant manager as a new trainee sent over from the downtown location. "Yo, Kyle," a tall guy with a buzz cut said, walking over with a half-eaten granola bar. "You're with me, I'm Marcus." Marcus was the location manager. Zayden nodded. "Cool, man, just tell me what to do." Marcus tossed the rest of the bar in the trash. "Easy. Grab a mitt, wipe down the bumpers after they hit the soap arch, then rinse. Don't slow anyone down. We're 2 guys short this week." "Why's that?" Zayden asked casually. Marcus sighed. "Quit, couldn't handle it. Kids flake out after 2 days. You'll probably do the same." Zayden didn't answer. He followed Marcus to the wash bay and got to work. It was fast-paced and hot. Within minutes, Zayden's shirt stuck to his back. But the job wasn't what bothered him. It was the atmosphere. Everyone seemed tense. No joking, no music, no small talk. Just rushed movements, clipped orders, and eyes constantly on Marcus, who barked at workers about speed and keeping the line moving. Around noon, Zayden noticed a young woman wiping down hubcaps in the far lane. She looked like she was barely 18, cheeks flushed from the heat, her hands trembling slightly. She stepped back and leaned on the hood of a car for a second. Marcus stormed over. "Sierra, you on break?" "No, sir," she said, startled, wiping sweat from her lip. "Then keep moving." "You don't get a break until 4. You've only been here 2 weeks. Earn it." Zayden blinked. "Earn a break." Sierra straightened up, nodded, and got back to work. Zayden walked over to her a few minutes later while rinsing a rear bumper. "You okay?" he asked. She startled again. "Yeah, just tired." "I'm used to it." "You don't get a lunch." Sierra gave a small shake of her head. "New hires don't get full breaks, not for the first month. Marcus says it's policy." Zayden's jaw clenched. That was not policy, that was illegal. He kept working through the day, letting the heat beat down on his back while watching the way Marcus ran the crew. It was all pressure and speed. He didn't speak to customers. He didn't thank anyone. He just paced and pushed. By 3 o'clock, another employee, a lanky guy named Ali, asked if he could grab water. "Water's in the back." "You can get it when you clock out," Marcus snapped. Zayden saw Ali's face fall. He didn't argue, just kept scrubbing. By the end of the shift, Zayden's arms ached. His forearms were sunburned. He sat on the curb behind the building and watched Sierra stumble to the back room. She looked like she could barely walk. He stood up and followed her, pretending to grab a towel. Inside, she was slumped beside the lockers, her face pale. "You need water," Zayden said. "Now, I'm fine. I don't want to get written up." "Written up?" Sierra nodded. "Marcus says we're not allowed to leave the bay unless we're told to. I already got one write-up for leaning against a car." Zayden stared at her. This wasn't just mismanagement. This was abuse. He helped her sit up and handed her a bottle of water from the vending machine. She sipped it carefully. "Why stay?" he asked. Sierra smiled weakly. "It's the first job I got after my mom passed. I can't lose it." Zayden's stomach twisted. He walked back out to the bay just as Marcus was finishing a smoke by the dumpster. "Hey, Marcus," Zayden said. "Got a question." Marcus looked him over. "Yeah, what's the deal with the break policy?" "I thought people were supposed to get 15 minutes every 4 hours." Marcus rolled his eyes. "We don't do that for new hires. They gotta prove they're not soft. Once they last a month, they get breaks. That's not how labor laws work." "You sound like HR," Marcus said, chuckling. "You gonna report me?" Zayden didn't answer. Instead, he gave a tight smile and walked away, but in his mind the decision was already made. He wasn't just going to report Marcus, he was going to end this. The next morning, Zayden arrived early. The sky was still dim, streaked with pale orange, and the lot was empty aside from a beat-up blue sedan parked near the side gate. Sierra sat on the hood, arms wrapped around her knees, head bowed. He walked over and sat beside her, careful not to speak until she noticed him. "You're here early," he said quietly. "I walked," she replied. "Bus doesn't run this early." He nodded, then glanced at the thin canvas shoes on her feet. One of the soles was peeling. He didn't comment when Marcus rolled up 15 minutes later. He didn't acknowledge either of them. He unlocked the back door, walked in, and let it slam shut behind him. Inside, the break room was dim and stale. A single fluorescent light flickered above a cracked vending machine. Zayden changed into his work shirt and stepped into the wash bay just as the first car pulled in. The sun was rising fast, and with it, the temperature. By mid-morning, the team had settled into a routine. Zayden worked the rinse station again, opposite a guy named Leo who barely spoke, just nodded occasionally between tasks. Zayden noticed Leo's limp. It wasn't obvious at first, more a hitch in his step when he turned quickly. But as the hours dragged on, it worsened. During a lull in the line, Zayden tossed his mitt in a bucket and leaned toward him. "You all right, man?" Leo didn't look up. "Tore my knee 2 weeks ago." "Still waiting for them to approve time off." "Who's them?" Marcus said he'd talked to corporate. "Still hasn't." Zayden frowned. "You report it." Leo shook his head. "Didn't want to make noise. He said if I went straight to HR, it'd take longer." Zayden exhaled slowly. "You got a doctor's note?" "Yeah, in my locker. Keep a copy on you tomorrow." Leo finally looked at him. "Why?" "Just in case." The next car rolled in and they got back to work. At noon, the air felt like it was pressing down on them. A black SUV pulled into the service lane, and a teenage boy hopped out, followed by his father, a tall, heavy-set man with graying temples and a stiff posture. Zayden recognized the model instantly. Top of the line, full detailing package. He stepped aside to let the next crew handle the interior vacuum while he moved to the bumper. As he worked, he heard the man's voice rise near the waiting bench. "I said I wanted the seats steamed, not just wiped. We're short today, sir." "We'll get to it as soon as. I don't care if you're short, I'm paying for premium." Zayden looked up. The man was pointing a thick finger at Sierra, who stood stiffly, her hands clasped behind her back. "Sir, you're just giving excuses." "That's what you're just doing." Sierra didn't flinch, but her eyes darted toward Marcus, who stood near the dryer hose, pretending not to hear. Zayden dropped his mitt and walked over. "Everything all right?" he asked casually. The man turned. "You work here?" "Yeah." "Let me help." He stepped between them, glancing briefly at Sierra. Her shoulders were rigid. "I'll steam the seats myself. Won't take more than a minute." The man folded his arms. "It better not." Zayden nodded once and turned away without another word. Sierra followed him to the supply rack near the back, where he grabbed the steamer nozzle. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yeah, I did." She didn't answer. By the time they finished the SUV, Marcus had wandered off to the break room. Again. Zayden handed the steamer back to Sierra and walked into the back hall. The door to the office was ajar. Inside, Marcus sat on his phone, sipping an energy drink. Zayden knocked once. Marcus looked up. "What?" "Leo's limping bad. He needs time off. You following up with HR?" Marcus shrugged. "He said he's fine." "He didn't. He said he's waiting on you." Marcus leaned back. "Look, if you're gonna start telling me how to manage my team, we're gonna have a problem. I'm just saying, if someone's injured, they shouldn't be working." "Liability aside, it's not right." Marcus stood up slowly. You think you know how this place runs. You've been here, what, 2 days? Zayden held his ground. Long enough to see what's broken. Marcus stepped closer. You're just a trainee, you don't get an opinion. Zayden didn't respond. He turned and walked out. By the end of the shift, Marcus had disappeared again. Zayden found him behind the building, sitting on a crate and scrolling through his phone. He was halfway through a cigarette, ash falling onto his shirt. One of the dryers had overheated, and the crew had to drag a fan over to keep the motor from shutting down. Zayden ran the line with Sierra and Illy, both of whom looked like they were running on fumes. As the last car rolled out, Sierra leaned against the doorframe, breathing heavily. You good? Zayden asked. She nodded, but her eyes were glassy. He pulled a water bottle from the cooler and handed it to her. She took it with both hands like it might slip. I'm gonna be real with you, he said. You shouldn't be here tomorrow, take a day. Just one. I can't afford to. You can't afford to collapse either. She didn't answer. The next morning, Zayden arrived even earlier. He waited near the back gate, watching as cars trickled into the lot. Leo limped in around 6:30, his expression unreadable. He walked past Zayden without a word. Hey, Zayden called after him. You bring the note, Leo paused, then nodded, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Good, keep it on you. Marcus pulled in 10 minutes later, music blaring from his truck. He stepped out, sunglasses on, and made a show of stretching. Zayden met him near the entrance. We need to talk. Marcus didn't stop walking. Later, I got inventory. No, now, Marcus turned. You got a problem, Kyle? Zayden took off his glasses, then the hat, then the apron. Marcus blinked. What the hell are you? My name's Zayden Moore. I own this company. Silence dropped like a hammer. Marcus's mouth opened, then closed. Zayden stepped forward. You've been violating state labor laws, denying breaks, ignoring injuries. Letting customers berate your staff while you hide in the back. I didn't, you did, and you're done. Marcus looked around the lot like someone might step in. No one did. Zayden turned to the others. Go inside, take 15, everyone. Sierra didn't move at first. Then she slowly nodded and walked toward the break room. Leo followed, his limp more noticeable now. Zayden looked back at Marcus. You'll be contacted by HR today. Leave your keys. You're no longer employed here. Marcus opened his mouth again, but Zayden was already walking away. He stepped into the bay, looked around at the worn equipment, the stained mats, the exhausted faces. He knew what came next. But first, he rolled up his sleeves, picked up a mitt, and got back to work. Zayden slid the bay door open just enough to let in the morning air. It was barely past 6, and the sky still held a gray haze. The crew moved quietly around him, unsure of what to say. The only sound came from the hose sputtering against the concrete and the occasional clatter of a dropped mitt. No one had seen Marcus since the previous morning. His name had already been removed from the schedule, and Zayden had spoken with HR late into the night to ensure the termination was processed cleanly. There would be no appeal. The evidence was overwhelming: eyewitness accounts, ignored doctor notes, even tampered time logs that had conveniently shaved minutes off clock-ins. Zayden walked to the shed out back where the supply logs were kept. The metal latch screeched when he pulled it open. Inside, the inventory sheet was clipped to a board, but half the boxes listed towels, soap concentrate, even gloves had blank restock dates. No wonder the team looked like they were rationing every squirt of window cleaner. He stepped out and found Javier, the assistant manager, crouched near the vacuums, repairing a frayed hose with duct tape. You didn't mention the inventory issues, Zayden said. Javier stood up slowly. Didn't want to cause waves. Marcus was particular. You're in charge now, Zayden said. At least for the time being, we need to restock today. Javier hesitated. I can call the supplier, but Marcus used to. He had a way of keeping costs under a certain number. If I go over, I need district approval. You have it, Zayden said. Spend what you need. Don't cut corners. Javier nodded once, then turned toward the office. As the morning rush began, Zayden moved with the team, filling in wherever hands were short. He dried mirrors with Sierra, helped Ali with a stubborn mud-caked fender, and took over the final wipe down when Leo had to sit for a few minutes. No one complained. No one asked questions. But their eyes followed him differently now, not out of fear, not quite out of respect yet, but curiosity. As if they were waiting to see what he'd do next, 2 hours into the shift, a gray sedan pulled into lane 2. Zayden grabbed a mitt and stepped forward, but Javier caught his arm. "Watch this guy," he said under his breath. "Always finds something wrong. Every time." The driver stepped out, a man in his 50s, pressed polo, polished loafers, sunglasses, even though the sun had barely broken through the clouds. He gave the car a quick once-over, then waved Javier over. "That scratch wasn't there when I came in." Javier frowned. "Sir, your car hasn't entered the wash yet. Still, I didn't see that this morning." Zayden stepped up beside Javier. "We can check the entry footage," he offered, "but I saw the scratch before the car entered." The man turned toward him. "Who are you?" "I'm Zayden. I'm on site today to help the team." "I didn't ask for help," the man said flatly. Zayden didn't flinch. "We take damage claims seriously, but we also document every vehicle before it enters. If you'd like to file a report, I can help you do that." The man stared at him, then gave a dismissive wave. "Forget it, just clean the windows right this time, not like last week." He walked off toward the waiting bench. Javier exhaled slowly. "Don't know how you stayed so calm." Zayden's reply was quiet. "You get used to it, but they shouldn't have to." He turned back to the line, a red coupe next, then a dusty van. The crew worked faster now, not because of pressure, but because there was rhythm again. A flow. Around noon, Zayden pulled Sierra aside. "You're not on the afternoon list," he said. "You heading out?" She looked surprised. "Yeah, I pick up my brother after school," he nodded. "I want to ask you something." Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't move. "You've been here almost 3 weeks. What's the one thing we're doing wrong that no one's saying out loud?" She hesitated, then answered slowly. "We don't train people, not really. You get a pair of gloves and someone says, 'Follow me,' that's it." Zayden raised his eyebrows. "That's good to know." She looked confused. "Good, helpful," he clarified. "That's something I can fix." Before she could respond, Ali called her over. She gave Zayden a small nod and jogged off toward the vacuums. Inside the office, Zayden pulled out the onboarding folder. Most of the papers were outdated printed copies of old safety sheets, a faded checklist that hadn't been updated in 2 years. One of the forms still had Marcus's name in the trainer field, scribbled in Sharpie. He opened his laptop and drafted a new checklist, then paused at the final item. Mentorship. He wrote the word, then underlined it. By the time he stepped back out, Javier had returned with a fresh shipment, boxes of soap concentrate, microfiber towels, and sealed bottles of degreaser. Zayden helped unload them, stacking everything neatly in the shed. Javier looked at the boxes. "First time we've been fully stocked in months." "Let's not let it slip again," Zayden said. As they walked back toward the bay, a voice called out from the far side of the lot. "Hey, is Marcus here?" A woman stood beside a black motorcycle, helmet under one arm. Her arms were tattooed to the wrist, and she wore a sleeveless shop shirt with grease stains on the front. "Depends who's asking," Zayden said. "I used to work here," she said. "Quit 6 months ago, just wanted to see if the tyrant was gone yet." "He's gone," Zayden said. She grinned. "Good. Name's Tasha. I trained half this crew back in the day until he started cutting hours if people asked too many questions." Zayden glanced at Javier, then back at her. "Still looking for work?" She tilted her head. "You offering?" "I could use someone who knows the crew and isn't afraid to speak up." She looked around. "Well, the team's still standing, that's something." Zayden handed her an application clipboard. "Start tomorrow, manager in training. Let's build something better." She took the clipboard, then winked at Javier. "Guess we're doing this." Later that afternoon, Zayden called a quick meeting. The crew gathered in the shade near the vending machines, wiping sweat from their brows and leaning on the wall. "Starting next week," he said, "we're rebuilding our onboarding. Every new hire gets 2 full days of paid training. No exceptions." A few surprised glances passed between the crew. Break schedules are being enforced not based on time served but on labor law. If someone tells you otherwise, send them to me. No one said anything, but the silence felt different this time, not tense, expectant. Javier's stepping up for now and Tasha's coming back to help rebuild operations. Sierra raised a hand. Does that mean we're hiring more? Zayden nodded. Yes, but carefully. No more throwing people in the deep end and hoping they swim. Leo leaned forward slightly. And injuries? Zayden pointed at him. If you're hurt, you report it, we document it, and you get time off. No more middlemen. That's a promise. The meeting ended without applause, without cheers. Just quiet nods, glances exchanged, a few murmured words between teammates. But the shift that followed moved differently, not faster, not louder, just lighter. As the sun dipped lower, Zayden helped close up. He swept the drying station, hosed down the concrete, and stacked the wet towels for laundry. Before heading out, he walked past the schedule board in the back hall. The names were still written in fading marker. Some had been crossed out, others rewritten. He picked up the dry erase pen and added one more name under the trainer column. Sierra. Then he walked out into the evening air, the hum of the lot quiet behind him. By the end of the week, the heat hadn't let up, but the tone around the wash had. It wasn't fixed, Zayden knew that much, but the tightness in people's shoulders had started to ease. The crew still moved quickly, but not like they were being hunted. There was eye contact now. A few quiet jokes between turns on the vacuums. Tasha had taken over the early shift supervisor duties, and her presence alone had changed the rhythm. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. Zayden sat with Javier in the back office, going through applications. A dozen resumes were spread out between them. Most were thin on experience, but that didn't bother Zayden. He wasn't looking for perfect, he was looking for teachable. Any standouts? Javier asked, flipping one over. This one, Zayden said, tapping a single-page application. Wants part-time, lives 5 blocks away. Said they've only worked retail, but listed 3 references who all used the word reliable. That's worth something. Javier nodded. You want me to call them? I'll do it. If we're going to rebuild the culture, it starts with who we bring in. Zayden stood, stretched his back, then glanced out the small window overlooking the wash lane. Sierra had just handed a microfiber cloth to a new kid, maybe 16, 17, who looked terrified to touch the chrome rims on a customer's SUV. She didn't correct him, she showed him. Slow, patient, then nodded when he tried it himself. Zayden turned back to Javier. She's going to be better at this than either of us. Javier smiled faintly. I already told her she's leading training next week. Zayden raised an eyebrow. She say yes, she said, only if I get to rewrite the manual. Zayden laughed. Good. That afternoon, the regional compliance officer arrived unannounced. Zayden met her in the lot, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her head. I heard what happened, she said. HR sent me to audit the site, not just the records, the practices. Good, Zayden said. Walk wherever you want, ask whoever you want. She didn't waste time. She spoke with each employee one-on-one, out of earshot, no clipboard in hand during the conversations, just observation. After an hour, she returned to Zayden outside the shed. They're tired, she said, but not scared. That's the difference. Zayden said nothing. I found the old write-up logs. Marcus reused the same form 6 times, same signature, same date, different names. It's already flagged. Let me guess, Zayden said. He was trying to build a paper trail to protect himself. She nodded. But didn't bother changing the time stamps. Amateur mistake. Zayden exhaled. Any fines? No, you self-reported. HR already documented your response. And since you've corrected the staffing gaps and enforced break compliance, you're clear. But you need consistent documentation moving forward. We'll have it, Zayden said. She paused, then added, and I'll say this, most owners in your position don't show up to scrub rims. Zayden looked past her toward the bay. I didn't come to be seen. I came because I stopped paying attention. She left without ceremony. Zayden didn't watch her go. The next morning, Leo showed up with a compression brace on his knee and a lighter step. He wasn't back on full duty, but he'd asked to work the drying station just for a couple of hours. The brace had been covered by the company's insurance after HR finally received the proper incident report. Zayden had followed up personally to make sure there were no gaps in the claim. "You sure you're ready?" Zayden asked as Leo pulled on gloves. Leo gave a short nod. "I'd rather be useful than sitting at home thinking about it. Just flag someone if you feel the strain, no heroics." "I'm not trying to be a hero," Leo said, "just tired of feeling like a problem." "You're not the problem," Zayden said. "You were never the problem." Later that day, a woman in a tailored blouse parked her SUV and walked straight to the wash lane, bypassing the kiosk. She asked for the manager. Tasha stepped forward, hands at her sides. "I'm the floor lead. Can I help you?" The woman didn't smile. "I was here 3 weeks ago. The man running this place told my son he wasn't allowed to refill his water bottle unless he paid for it." Tasha's expression didn't change. "That wouldn't have been me. We've had a leadership change." Zayden stepped forward. "That policy doesn't exist." "It never did." The woman looked at him. "You the new manager, I'm the owner," she squinted. "You're the one who took over last week. I've always owned it. I'm just back on the ground now." She folded her arms. "Then let me say this. I watched your staff today, that girl over there. The one helping the boy with the learning disability, that wasn't performative. She saw that he was confused and didn't make a show of it. She just helped, quietly." Zayden followed her gaze. Sierra was crouched beside a young man in a school uniform, showing him how to use the air nozzle without tipping the bottle rack. The woman turned back to Zayden. "Next time someone like Marcus runs a place like this, don't wait so long to notice." Zayden nodded once. "I won't." She left without another word. By the end of the week, 4 new hires had been added to the schedule, all part-time, staggered shifts to avoid burnout. Zayden had personally walked each of them through the updated training checklist, including the sections Sierra had added. Respect is not optional. Saturday morning came with a cooler breeze. The crew moved steadily through the first batch of cars. Tasha watched from the corner, clipboard in hand, but didn't interfere. She was letting the team run itself for once. As Zayden filled the mop bucket near the supply shed, Sierra approached. She held a folded piece of paper. He looked up. "Something wrong," she shook her head. "It's my 2-week notice." He blinked. "You quitting?" "No, I'm starting a course at the community college, business admin. 2 days a week. I want to come back part-time, but I can't keep doing full shifts." Zayden took the paper. "You didn't need to handwrite this." "I wanted to." Felt right. He looked at the text, then folded it carefully and put it in his back pocket. "What are you hoping to do with the degree?" "Maybe end up where you're standing," she said, "but without waiting until something breaks before I fix it." Zayden smiled faintly. "You'll probably be better at it than me, I know." They both laughed, and she walked back to the drying station. By closing time, the lot was empty, the hoses drained, and the sun had dipped behind the storage warehouse across the street. Zayden helped roll the last drying mat into the bin, then leaned against the edge of the bay door frame. Javier joined him, wiping his hands with a damp towel. "Don't take this the wrong way," Javier said, "but I didn't think you'd last more than 3 days out here." "I didn't either," Zayden said. "So what now?" "Now we write down everything that worked and everything that didn't. Then we repeat the good parts and fix the rest." Javier nodded. "You heading back to headquarters next week?" Zayden shook his head. "Not yet. There's still too much to see." They stood in silence for a moment, the quiet broken only by the rattle of the last cart being wheeled inside. The wash lane, once a place of tension and exhaustion, now simply looked like what it was: a workplace. One doing its job, one person at a time. Zayden watched the lights flicker off inside the office, then turned toward the gate. He'd come undercover to find out what was broken. He wasn't leaving until he helped rebuild it.